This weekend, Andy's dancing in Kmart, Ryan goes mile high, and we add a new gimmick to the Buy Rent Burn. I'm Ryan,
I'm Andy.
and this is Weekend Rental, episode 187. All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Weekend Rental. And yeah, how you been, man? Anything happened in the last couple of weeks since our last recording?
No, not really much at all. But I did hear that they're still not selling edibles in North Dakota. So instead of driving over the border to Minnesota, you took a flight somewhere.
yeah, that was my driving factor. Was state legal THC. Yeah, so since we recorded last, I just got back yesterday actually. My wife and I celebrated our 17th wedding anniversary, and we always look for something to do to try and get away for like a day. And it just so happened that Frontier Airlines, I just looked one time and they were having round trip flights from Fargo to Denver for $62 a person, which, I mean, what are you going to do at that point? You're not going to drive much of anywhere for that cheap. So we just bought them and we winged it. And we went to Denver and flew out on a Saturday evening, spent all Sunday in the area and came back Monday. It was good. Big shout out, I got to say. I got to meet up with Arthur, Pocket Rocket Radio, who the two of us have probably been like putting twisted comments on each other's YouTube videos for like the last 8 or 9 years now. So it's like, it's really cool. Like, one of my bucket list people, it's like I technically, you could air quote know this person. We have been internet friends. We've chatted plenty outside. We messaged each other, played some games online, PS4 or whatever. But to like get to see him in person was super cool. I messaged him and said, "Hey, I'm coming into town. Like, my wife will kill me if I hang out with you on our anniversary. But hey, if we happen to be in your area the night before and you like want to show up at a brewery and we're going to be there, like, let's do it." And he was down, which was super cool. So I felt a little bad. We flew in, flight was slightly behind, not bad, like 10 minutes. But then the hotel shuttle was like an abomination. It took us like 40 minutes to get back to the hotel from the airport. And we were like as close to the airport as you could be. So he waited around like 40 minutes before we showed up. But yeah, we ran into him at a brewery, got to chat with him in person. It was pretty surreal and nice to like catch up with like this person you never like actually gotten to like shake their hand or whatever. And it was fun. So a big thank you to Arthur. And then while we were sitting there, like he's like, "So what's your plan while you guys are in town?" I was like, "Well, we don't really have one." My wife was like, "Well, yeah, we were thinking we'd just like go downtown." He's like, "You're going downtown?" We're like, "Well, yeah." He's like, "Maybe just stay away from like 16th. And like, my wife's like, "But that's where everything's at. That's where we'd be going." I'm like, "Why should we not be going down there?" He's like, "Well, there's just like tons of homeless encampments and all this stuff." And I was like, "Oh," that sucks. Cause like, we've been here like 17 years ago and it was kind of cool down there. So we just figured we'd take the train. He's like, "You're taking the train?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Don't do that." He's like, "There's Uber." I'm like, "Am I going to get stabbed in the train?" He's like, "Well, no." He's like, "Well, yes, actually that happens." I'm like, "Okay, so don't go downtown. I'm going to die on the train." And then, so he recommends Boulder. He's like, "Just like go to Boulder." He's like, "It's about the same distance as downtown. It's way more chill." Like, I lived out there for a while. And it was a good recommendation. We got home, immediately started like Googling things, reading reviews, and it was like, yeah, I was like 3 people shot and killed in plain daylight like a month ago. And then somebody else was shot over a robbery in Union Station like 2 weeks ago. I was like, "But that's the train station we'd get in on." I was like, so we're kind of freaking out. And I'm like, all right. And I don't mean to like disparage Denver. I'm sure it's safer than headlines would have you read. But when a local who's been there, like born and raised in the area, tells you maybe that's not the best idea, and then you start reading things, and you're like, okay, this is probably really not the best idea. I'm sure most of Denver's great. I don't want to discourage anyone from going. But we made the decision to follow Arthur's advice, and we went out to Boulder. So our Denver trip turned into like a Denver fly-in and day trip to Boulder. Boulder was really cool. It's up against the mountains, like 25 miles out of Denver proper. It feels a lot. It reminded me a lot of like Bozeman, where it's like a ski town sort of vibe. And he recommended we go to Pearl Street, which is kind of like the big shopping eatery area. And it was awesome. It was called the Pearl Street Mall. It was basically a walking street, kind of like you'd see over in European cities, like no traffic, cobblestone. Just walk around, shops, um, restaurants, people everywhere. Really cool. You could tell pretty gentrified. Like when you're in a town of like 100,000 people on like a 3 block strip, and there's like a Patagonia and like a Burton shop, and I don't know, like any shop you walked into, it was like, hey, do you want this like ultra light fall jacket for $465? Because we've got it. You know what I mean? Like clearly not for me, but at the same time, the vibe was really cool. Super chill. Mountains were right in the background. We got to have a couple drinks. The weather was supposed to be just awful, and it was for the most part. And then it rained up until about noon, and we decided like, well, there's a barcade. We'll go check that out. And it was down in like a basement. Oh God, one of the worst barcades I've ever been to. Like fruit flies everywhere, like standing water on the floor. I don't want to judge anybody, but a guy that was probably like 48 came in to play pinball at one point, and he had a cardigan sweater on, jean shorts about 3 inches below his waist cut off, and then dress shoes and dress socks up to about his knees. And he just sat there playing pinball the
Oh,
entire
wow.
time we were there. To each their own. I don't know in what context that's a good look, though. Not that that has any judgment in the establishment, but it didn't help. It didn't help at all. So it was like a really disgusting arcade. So we had like a tap beer and then like bounced. And then, but the beautiful thing, and the reason I mentioned that is we kind of went down there in this gloomy, shitty day, and we got out of there about 1. And for whatever reason, like clouds had cleared, things warmed up. It was like a blue sky day, 75 degrees. And we just get to like hang out after that and walk around and really enjoy it. So yeah, I just rambled on really long about a very insignificant, well, not insignificant, but a very short day trip. But it was fun. It was a spur of the moment thing. Arthur's recommendation was great, so thank you again. We had a lot of fun, and yeah, Boulder's cool. Maybe don't go to downtown Denver if everything I've heard is correct. So
Yeah, I have some relatives in like Colorado Springs, and it over the years it's gotten more and more like that. Like, maybe don't hang out in Colorado Springs if you don't know where you're going.
yeah,
I don't know.
and that was kind of his recommendation. He's like, well, if you know where you're at, he's like, you just don't want to take like the in between gaps. I'm like, well, we're not gonna know. I don't want to be wrong. And then even in Boulder, there were a significant number of people sleeping in like corners and crevices on the main drag. So if that's happening on the outskirts, I can only imagine what downtown's like. And you and I have been to Portland when Portland was arguably better. So I can't
Yeah.
imagine what Portland looks like now or what downtown
Hmm.
Denver potentially looks like. So
Well, and you don't know how many of them are just doing it for a YouTube channel anymore at this point.
yeah, that's right. I could have started my own YouTube channel. I could have been one of those people that just like goes around and interviews homeless people. Like, how was your life crushed? Why did you end up here? It's
Yeah.
just like making money off the destitute. It's so gross.
And in the background is that $400 jacket.
Right.
Like, yep.
Do you know how much fentanyl you could get for the coat I'm currently wearing?
Uh, yeah. Well, it sounds like Arthur needs to come to Fargo then.
Yeah, I told him. He was asking about Fargo. He was like, I've heard cost of living's really great. He's like, what do you think of it? I'm like, do you hate trees and hills? I'm like, if so, you might like it.
Do you want the snow to hang out for about 10 times longer than it does in Denver, maybe, when it snows?
Yes. Yeah, it was so funny too because like the one lady in Boulder, when we told her where she's from, is like, "Oh, much warmer here." I'm like, "No, it's like 70 here. It was like 90 when I left Fargo." But yeah, I did tell Arthur, I was like, for what he does, like, you know, technical coding and stuff. I was like, there's actually like a ton of opportunity and like the
Hmm.
whole whole university
Yeah,
backing like the tech sector in the area we're at. And I'm like, you could get a good paying job pretty quickly, but
and the houses are probably half the cost at least.
yeah, we passed. Well, we took Uber out too because I didn't want to rent a car. It didn't make any economical sense anymore these days. We took Uber in and out to go to Boulder, and we passed a sign. It was like a new development, and they were like your traditional like stack next to your neighbor, probably connected like townhouse thing, like 2 levels. And like starting at like 400K up. I'm like, that's a really bad price. Like
Yep.
that sucks. Like not that things are drastically cheaper here, but wow. I don't
Yeah,
know.
and that's probably a good price. Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah. I did. It was interesting because we had never taken. I drove to Denver once, coming from the other direction, but I'd never driven from the airport out past Denver, and it reminds me so much of Billings, where it's like this Midwest industrial like shit stain of a town, where like all you're passing through is just like diesel refinement facilities and like talk about putting your absolute worst foot forward. And not to say that like Billings and Denver don't have fantastic parts to the city, but like when your main thoroughfare, one of them is like through just industrial wasteland, like you are not selling your city at all. It's bad. It's so bad. I don't know.
It was $62, Ryan.
That's true. It was glorious for $62. Yeah. No, it was fun. I can say like it was definitely worth it. Like our alternative would have been to like do what? I don't know. Drive somewhere like Minneapolis. I'd have spent way more money. Had
Yep.
to be behind the wheel. There's something to be said about a vacation where you just hop on a plane, you hop in an Uber, and that's the extent of your involvement. So it was nice.
Yeah.
We had some good fun. We had some good food. A lot of cool views. Hit a couple breweries that were all right, so I can't complain. And my wife hasn't left me yet, so also great. So thanks to her. 17 years and counting. Probably pushing my luck at this point, but
Yeah. You should start dressing like that guy from the barcade and see if
she did talk to me about how attractive that was. I was like, well, I can get some knee-high socks and I can cut jeans. It's well within my grasp. So
Yep.
mhm. That guy was really into Ghostbusters pinball. Like in the hour and a half we were there, he played nothing else but Ghostbusters pinball. So
Wow.
maybe he was possessed and he was the key master or whatever. I don't know. Yeah.
Huh.
So what's been going on in your world then besides
Nothing that exciting.
no?
I stayed home, did hardly shit. I beat a video game.
Oh.
Me and my wife beat my time in Sandrock, which is a Stardew Valley type of game.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning that.
Yep. So we finished that. I bet we were close to 100 hours in that.
Damn.
Yeah. It definitely gets away from you. It's one of those games where it's like you sit down for an hour and then all of a sudden it's like 3 hours.
Yeah.
Then
Those are
it's
the
like,
best
oh,
games.
what are we making for lunch? Something quick so we can keep playing.
So is this one of those things that's gonna get like a DLC drop and you're gonna get pulled back in later, or what do you think?
I don't think so. Um, Even the multiplayer is like it's weird because it separates it from the main game. It's not like built into the regular game. There's an online and then there's like a regular. And
Okay.
the regular seems like it has much more of a story, where this is just kind of like do the stuff, build the stuff, get more stuff type thing.
Okay.
But yeah, I was kind of surprised after we were done that I would be like, okay, I'm burnt out on this. I need to like stop that, you know? but I ended up like trying to find another game like that, and
You're like, I
I
hate
don't
how
know.
much
There's
effort we put into this. Let me find a new version.
I know exactly. Start over. It's like
Right.
it is weird in that regard.
So did you find something?
Not really, because I was looking on Game Pass basically, and the ones that are out there are not like crossplay between PC and Xbox, so it's like it doesn't really work out.
Sure.
Split screen just sucks in that regard if they're not like, yeah. And yeah, I think Valheim kind of caught my attention. I don't know if my wife would be really into that because it's more combat heavy, but
Yeah, I liked Valheim a lot. It just maybe it's more polished now, but I don't know. It it
yeah,
it doesn't have the things to grasp you past to me like mid game much. But again, I played it at launch. Maybe it's way better now.
yeah. Well, it also said it was leaving Game Pass relatively
I
soon,
don't know. Oh
so
fuck that.
probably not worth investing in it.
Right.
Um, Maybe don't like have a game leave Game Pass while it's still in game preview. That's weird to me, but
Right. Yeah, that's a fair point.
I suppose they can't control that.
What's the next thing from the Stardew Valley guy? Like, it's got a name, right? But no release date.
Yeah, well, there's an update that he's making for Stardew Valley out in November, I think.
Okay.
So who knows? Maybe we'll head back into that. But yeah, there's like some like you're a chocolatier or something,
Mm-hmm.
but I haven't heard anything about that lately. So I don't know if he quit working on it.
Well, he's still like a one
Back to
man
Stardew.
crew too, right? Like he's done everything by
I think
himself.
for the most part, yeah.
It's nuts.
Which that stuff is so weird. Like, I mean, to go off the rails here, like we've been playing Lethal Company like since last year. For about a year now, I've been playing Lethal Company, and it's one guy, and he's like burnt out. He's just like, I'm gonna go work on my next game, and he's like kind of doing updates, and he's just like kind of half-assed updates, and it's like, man, you had a game that just like took over the world.
Yeah, bulk up, bring in people,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you can still be director. You can still control what's in the game and everything. You don't need to be doing the work if you're burnt out on it.
Yeah.
It's crazy to squander that, I guess. But at the same time, maybe he's not, the sales have, slowed down to the point where, well, who's going to buy it now? I don't know.
Yeah, like Lethal Company is one of those games where it's like you have to almost do that. Like if you're providing like a singular narrative or like single player open world sort of thing, like that's different. Like I feel like you have the time to capitalize on like the long game, but when you get something that hits and it hinges on multiplayer, if you're not willing to like bring other people in and like keep it hot, I don't know
Yeah.
what you're doing, you know?
Yeah. And he's built so much stuff on the peripheral that it's like some sort of story, like an end game thing, which is not there yet.
Yeah.
So every time he makes an update, everybody's like, go down the chute, see what's down there. Is there anything new? It never is. And it's like, well, what? At least finish the game then, if you're going to say you're moving on to the next thing. I don't know.
Yeah, it's it's too bad because like yeah, everybody was talking about the game for a while, for sure. I still would like to try
Yeah.
it, but I should watch for a sale.
Yep. Yeah, it's fun. I'll play with you sometime.
Yeah, I well, speaking of online multiplayer games that hit and scaled up quick, have you seen the news on Pal World?
Yes.
So Nintendo has finally pushed forward with a lawsuit. And it looks like they've realized that accusing them of theft on character design would have been like a legal black hole. So they've gone for what appears to be a suit based on proprietary, like registered game mode. It seems like they're
Like
going after
a patent on like
the patent on the
catching, right?
Pokeball. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it seems like they learned that they were going to be in like legal hell with their other angle. Um, it's just funny to me that this took like 18 months. The player base on that game is tanked, and the developers have failed to live up to any promise to really bring people back. So why Nintendo is now choosing to squash something, it's almost like they're giving them an extra shot in the arm for a game that was pretty much dying and dead.
Yeah.
I don't know why. they
Well, it was weird today. The PlayStation had a state of play, right?
Mhm.
And one of their announcements, I didn't realize this, but apparently it was never on PlayStation yet. And that launched today.
Oh.
So they made a big deal out of it. However, did not release in Japan on PlayStation.
Oh.
So maybe they're like, we're not gonna put any more of our money in that legal territory, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't even realize it was a state of play today. Um, it makes sense for it to be on PlayStation, but yeah, it's a game that, you know, having both of us sunk good amount of time into, like,
Hmm.
it very much paints itself into a corner within the first 30 hours. So, and I can't imagine that's changed at all.
No, it was fun for what it was. I just don't know. Once you do the research track, what else is there? Because the Pokemon like battling stuff just did not
Mhm.
was not like a real draw.
Yeah, they almost needed to like layer in like other players, right? Like it's one thing to do like an online session and like you can join up with like three or four people, but if you're not rolling out into a world where people can like actively fight each other with like the monsters they've built up,
Yeah,
like you've failed to capitalize on like the most engaging potential element of that game. So
yeah. It How has there never been like a straight up like s- a pseudo at least Pokemon MMO?
right.
Like since day one, that was like, oh, this is the logical thing, and nobody ever did it. There
Yeah, it
probably is
almost
one
seemed like
out
they were
there that I didn't.
trying to get there in the last few years, but
Yeah,
couldn't quite pull it out. I mean, the hardware is one thing too, but
yeah,
yeah, it's like that's the ultimate
and Game
draw.
Freak, who's just
Yeah.
sucks as a developer, but
Yeah, it's funny though cuz like it wasn't surprising to me at all that this lawsuit had finally like come to fruition. It just surprised me that they did it now cuz my takeaway was like who still gives a shit, you know what I mean?
yeah, I'm sure all that money for damages is still open for them. I'm guessing, but
You know what's better than a lawsuit is just like buying that company outright and having them develop games
yes,
alongside the
yes,
Pokemon company. You know what I mean? Because they
yeah,
kind of hit the home run on like, hey, we can just use AI to generate this like super derivative bullshit world and like kind of copy other assets, and we have a hit game. Like, if they actually gave a shit and tried a little bit, they can make Pokemon great.
yeah. They did like a really bare bones version of copying everything, and it was still the best Pokemon game in years. So
Yep.
like that says a lot about what Game Freak's doing over there with their
Yeah.
games.
Yeah. If you had a mild interest in Pokemon and like had a genuine appreciation of crafting games, it was a
Yep.
good time. Like my son and I played the hell out of it for a while. So
Yep.
yeah, poor Pal World.
Yeah. So that state of play today, there was not much. Um,
I saw some snippets about Legacy of Kain collection remaster
mhm.
potentially.
Yep. There's a Lunar collection. They're redoing
Sure.
Lunar games, which was funny because those came out, and then all of the big RPG people were just bitching because it's the PlayStation 1 versions and not the Sega CD ones, and it's like, it's a PlayStation game. What do you think?
Right. Right. Who was buying? Yeah. Right.
I don't
I
know.
agree.
But that's gonna be a limited run bullshit thing.
Oh, of
I'm sure of
course.
that down the
Yeah.
which is gonna suck, but and yeah, the big thing out of that was, they're making another, like, Ghost of Tsushima sequel, and that actually like,
Looked
that was the
good.
first thing that actually looked, obviously, it's pre-rendered probably not like on the hardware, but it definitely looked like, okay, this is above what, even the PS5 was looking like,
Okay.
So
I'm sure they were showing only the PlayStation 5 Pro version
yeah.
with dick melt technology.
I think my favorite tweet today was that they had Mark Cerny on this thing talking about the power of the PlayStation 5 Pro. And which like, holy shit, they even remastered the PS4 or the PS5 Pro announcement. It's like, yep, they've remastered everything.
Yeah.
Including the first Horizon is coming to PS5. And it's like, hasn't this been out?
It's and it can't.
That already
It came with
happened.
a patch. It came with a Pro patch.
Yeah. I thought this came out for PS5 already. Apparently not. They're just remastering everything.
I love that Sony likes to think that Horizon is a fucking thing. Like, it's such a thing. We're making a Lego version of it. Like,
yeah,
Horizon was fine. The sequel proved that prettier Zelda with a shallower gameplay mechanic and boring open world was not. I don't know. My stance, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I thought that series was mid at best. Like, having played through the whole thing, I put 30 some hours into it. I played through all Breath of the Wild too. Like, I know I didn't explore every facet of Horizon. There's just not much of a game under there. It's a graphics thing. It's not a, and you could say,
and the world, the lore. Yeah.
Right. But as far as like, do I want to revisit that? Am I engaged? No.
Right.
I was engaged enough
even
to
the
see it
second
through.
one. Yeah. The second one sounds like it was a lot more drawn out too.
Yeah. I just bought the second one like earlier this summer. I got a clearance like day one copy for like $10 and I'll probably play through it, like just mainline it, but I don't know.
Yeah. It's just wild that they don't, that they don't have any games for it. They're just remastering things over and over and over again. And it's like, you're putting out you put them out on the PC and you're just making PC games, but you're selling it 3 different times.
Right.
Based on whatever graphics card the thing has. It's weird.
Yeah. And then I was like seeing some people like reposting like release dates of like February 28th for some of the games. Like, well, February 28th, that's going to be the Switch 2 release date because those games are coming out on that day. I'm like, it's fucking dumb. Like, do you think Yakuza and Monster Hunter Wilds coming out on that same day means that the Switch comes out then? Like, not a fucking chance.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't know.
They did show Monster Hunter. That looked pretty
so
all right.
Excited. Well, I'm ready to chalk up our obligatory 50 hours with you.
Yep.
And then completely abandon the end game. Yeah. What? This opens up to a whole new tier of pain? Like, I had fun. Let's shut it off.
Yeah. The whole trailer is about a story of like this they thought this like monster was extinct, which already it's like, you're a monster hunter. Like, why are we going out to kill the one thing that we thought was extinct? Which is kind of weird.
The whole point is the fact that the monster exists, right? Yeah.
But I was looking at that monster. I'm like, I'm never going to see that thing. That's going to be like the end game thing that I'm never going to get to.
Yeah. We put so much time into Worlds, like to the point where I think you and I were probably almost expansion ready. But like dusting that off to get back in there was like such a hard undertaking, and I couldn't convince anyone to do it. And realistically, we would have fallen off in like the first 3 hours. But
yeah,
those games are so good. I'm excited for this one. Hopefully, it will be on. Like I just hope like it's cross-platform on everything. Like, let's just open it up like PC, PlayStation, Xbox, whatever the Switch gets, and make it. Fill those servers. Like, that's always the hardest part. Like, let's just fill the servers with like good people.
Yep. Yeah. And if you're going to do random drops, just give me the percentage. Just tell me, hey, if you're going to, don't just say, oh, this thing drops this. And then you have to grind it 10 times and you don't even know how often it drops it. I
And
don't
I'd
know.
also like them to bring back the whole campfire roasting meat mechanic. Like, I know it's
Mhm.
dumb, but I just really want to like hear that jingle while I'm like toasting meat on a skewer and like trying to time it. There's something very satisfying about that mechanic that they left
Looked
alone
like
with like three.
there was fishing in this one, maybe?
Oh yeah, fishing's been kind of maybe fishing's been out of it for a while, but fishing was a staple prior to Worlds.
Okay.
And then you could cook your own meat on skewers and stuff. Like you like literally to prep for hunts, you had to go out into an area, cook your meat in game, and then like abandon a mission and come back and like take your meat because I don't know. It was I get why they eliminated it. It was an extra layer of like grinding, but it was so satisfying. I don't know.
And then the cat said there's money to be made, and then they started making restaurants instead. So you just eat
Yes.
there.
I mean, I can't argue with those adorable cat animations too that I watched every fucking time because I could.
Yep.
There's something about a chef cat with an eye patch that just gets me every time.
Yeah.
Well, if we're talking about PlayStation news, we might as well talk about somewhat reputable news, supposedly from a trusted leaker who leaked the PS5 Pro stuff very accurately to the day. Has now come out and like released stuff for the Switch successor, as far as hardware specs, which had been out there before, but then like some 3D printed and imaged design specs of the console, which seemed to disprove the theory that it was going to be dual screen. This is, if true, appearing to be a slight upgrade screen wise size to the OLED, and the controller seems to be virtually the same and relying on the purported magnet lock-in interface system. But other than that, it looks just like a beefier Switch, which I guess is what we all wanted. It's just kind of like the boring, safe way to go, which again, not mad about. Like it, but I don't know.
Yeah, it is a weird feeling, isn't it? Because yeah, you're expecting some Nintendo like out of left field thing every time that something's going to be
Right.
like, "Wow, okay, I don't I want something to shit on immediately."
Right.
Because Nintendo's given me that for ever since Super Nintendo
I was
or
expecting the jelly
N64.
bean buttons to come back from the GameCube, where it's like, you want 4 buttons? Fuck you. Here's a giant one and 3 beans. You know what I mean? I don't
Yep.
know. Yeah, it does seem like the very un Nintendo thing to do, but also that fucking console prints money. Like, I'm sure they're not stupid enough to realize that
Mhm.
like they're in a unique situation, and they really are the unique console in that space, minus the Steam Deck and these other like, Asus and whatever, like not really penetrating devices. So it kind of makes sense for them to hold the course in this case because I think they're still living up to their Nintendo, like, we do everything differently.
Yeah, it just kinda sucks that I mean, you do have those other things and, Microsoft might be making one of these things, and
Right.
now they're just kinda, like, all becoming the same. When the Switch came out, it seemed like such a, "Wow, this is a left field thing too,"
Right.
and now it just seems like, well, that's just a whole line of product, like, that's another appliance in the house, that
Yeah.
everybody has.
Yeah. I was a little sad to see the purported like 256 internal memory. It's like, okay, well, throw away 15 gigs of that for whatever the operating system is, and then we're left with jack shit, right? Because this thing is supposedly, I mean, it's roughly spec wise on par with like a PlayStation 4, which is very adequate. You know what I mean? Like, that's more
Mhm.
than enough for a portable, but that means the games are probably like big AAA non Nintendo games are going to be, I don't know, with downloads 150 gigs downloadable
Right.
content. So you're getting like not a lot out of that. And then what's the storage going to be? Are we going to get SD cards again? Because if it's higher textures, does a micro SD have the speed to transmit that for gameplay? And if the answer to that is no, then what is the other solution? Because Nintendo doesn't typically do proprietary. So what are we looking at in that? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, that's I don't know like the piracy scene, but I would imagine like the SD card stuff is like the
Oh yeah,
entry point for that
right,
stuff. So
right.
I would imagine that they're like, if we can do away with that, that'd
No,
be
but it's
great.
okay now. They've eliminated the slide on rails for the Joy-Con, so you can't just like stick a toothpick in there anymore and like hack it. It's fine. Don't worry, Andy.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's huh.
That almost leaves you with what, USB-C 3? Is that the best option? And that's not an attractive option for a portable.
No. No, that wouldn't be good, I don't think.
Not to read a game from, unless they're gonna go with like you can only run games off internal and then you're constantly juggling and back and forth thing. But that's not. And maybe they've got some sort of like read system and like buffering built in to deal with that. It seems a little short-sighted for Nintendo to think about that, but at the same time, I could also see them not thinking about that because they've notoriously developed games on their current console that like clock in at like 10. Like what was Breath of the Wild? Like stupidly small, right? Like
Yeah,
under 20 gigabytes for like this huge game. So
yeah.
I can understand them not
Which makes me
fathoming how
wonder.
another developer couldn't adhere to that. You know what I mean?
Right. It makes you wonder how much time development costs that they have into optimizing that stuff down to that
Yeah.
amount, you know?
Well, and if you've got a good optimization method, why aren't you sharing it with your third-party developers? You know what I mean? You don't
Mm-hmm.
have to hand over the keys to the kingdom, but what are the tricks that
Yeah.
make that work? And really, I guess there probably aren't tricks. It's just, if you're EA, you've got 85 gigs of 4K textures for a game you already developed on another platform. Why are you going to scale it down? You know what I mean?
I don't know. You should watch that Dragon Age trailer today. It
Yeah.
looked like a remastered like Xbox 360 game. So I don't know what they're doing over there. It might just be the art that they were just like the art style, but it did not look good at all.
Mm.
I thought.
I'm surprised they're still working on that. It seemed like a series
Yeah.
they forgot about.
BioWare, remember?
We make games. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious on the Switch successor. By all accounts, I think it's safe to say that we'll probably get an announcement this year with the console first quarter of next. And I only say that because I know their fiscal year ends in March, right? For Nintendo. So
Yeah.
they typically like to go out with a bang. And if you're going to drop this thing in March, it's
I
going to get
mean,
money.
the way, these leaks come out, they're making them right now,
Right. Yeah, I've never bought a Nintendo console or really any console day one, but the Switch 2 or whatever it's going to be will probably be that
Mhm.
one for me because it's the
It's gotta be
only.
backwards compatible, right?
Yeah, it
I mean,
has
why
to be.
wouldn't you?
Right. Yeah, I really want it to be. I'm sure they're really contemplating now, like that whole like MIG switch thing and like the MIG dumper, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It,
Wait,
you,
it
to keep people in
mm,
that ecosystem,
yeah.
it's a winning formula. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Hmm. It is a bummer that it isn't a little bit more powerful because, I mean, another 3 years, it's really gonna all of a sudden, you got a new generation again, and then, well, now
Right.
we're back again to this again.
Because yeah, everything would point to that they can't upscale to HDR 4K, even on a dock,
Mhm.
given everything that we know so far or allegedly know. So yeah, that is a little rough, especially for me because I'm a person who, I guess, for whatever reason, I played through the entirety of Tears of the Kingdom on the handheld, and I think it's only because I got the OLED with it. But other than that, I don't play undocked, so it will hold back my experience pretty well.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not probably like the normal use case, but
No, but I mean, you're not playing third-party games on it anyway. Like, I
yeah, I
can't
guess
remember
that's
the
true.
last one. It's been indie games and Nintendo games, that's about it.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I have Game Pass for everything else
Mhm.
for now, anyway. until Microsoft
Yeah.
folds.
I wonder if it's even gonna just, it's almost like a pro model at this point. It's not even, it's so
Yeah, you're
little of
right.
an upgrade that,
Yeah, if they don't make any hardware revisions, which what's the last time they did that? 3DS, and
Mhm.
that didn't go well. They'll market it better. I can't say that this will go better for sure, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Hopefully they don't name it New Switch and then have
Oh
like
god, that new
all those.
moniker. I did that shenanigans was unbelievable. It's as bad as the series line of consoles.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm very much looking forward to the very strong fall that we have coming in for the Switch. Obviously, we got Zelda coming out by the time this episode goes live, which
Mhm.
I'm very much looking forward to. The Luigi and Mario, the Donkey Kong Country, the Mario Party. It's gonna be a big year.
Did you see that story that this Zelda was originally being developed as a Zelda maker? That's
Yeah,
really interesting.
yeah. I
I
read
could
some of
see why
that.
they got to the point where like, yeah, this maybe is too much to work into a game, so let's
Yeah,
turn it into something else.
yeah. It's pretty cool. And I saw like some of it was like potential ideas that they wanted to build and bolt on to tiers even and couldn't. And yeah, I I think that's gonna be my game of the fall for sure. Like that's gonna
Mhm.
be the one to pick up and sink time into. I don't play games like I used to, but I'll make time for that one. So
Yeah, that'll be a good one.
you can play more VR. It looks like.
Oh my gosh, okay, yeah. So, there's a couple apps in the Quest, which I've, been playing a decent amount since I just recently got it. And, it's kind of the Wild West on the VR front. Like, how Nintendo, we make fun of them, how there's some weird games coming out on there. Like, the stuff that happens on VR is on another level.
Sure.
I have an app called Big Screen, which is it's basically kind of like a social room thing where you can make your own room, but you can stream your desktop to it, and then you can make it
So people are
public.
just doing porn rooms in here, is what you're saying.
I did not see that. I'm guessing there probably are some,
Okay.
um, but there are people just like, here's Beetlejuice 2. Watch it in this fake theater
Oh
with
my
a
god.
bunch of other people.
Right.
Um,
How is Beetlejuice
so
2? Good.
I didn't watch all of it yet, but yeah, it's
Piracy confirmed.
but I think my favorite part is in here there's a couple channels in there that just do bad movies. So you hop in there and there's about, 15 people just it's a free for all of like mystery science theater on these terrible movies, and it's a pretty good time to just hang out and just rip on movies, and yeah, just jokes the whole time.
Nice.
um I even like, they have a website because I wanted to see what they were, they have a schedule out there, right, of what they're going to do. Go on this website, about a week before they they screened Andy the Talking Hedgehog, which was like, wow,
No.
I can't believe.
Oh, those poor bastards.
Yeah, that made the cut.
God, it's too bad he couldn't
I'm like,
join
yep,
that
these are my
one.
people.
Just analyze like the weird,
I
like
know.
psychotic father who wants to fucking bang his teenage daughter's friend. Oh god.
Uh,
I want you to create a
yeah.
room now and just show
So
like my
I
old shitty YouTube videos from like start to finish and just like have everyone dunk on me.
yeah,
Be great.
I'm just gonna put that Christmas one where you just touch each other's nipples
On
on
repeat, like
loop.
it just runs all day, like 8 hours of that.
Yep.
Yes. It's
Yep.
great.
So that one's pretty interesting, and the other one I have is VR chat, which is a little bit more well known.
Yep.
That's also a pretty wild place because it's just like the avatars are just like stuff that you can make an avatar out of anything basically,
Yeah.
and some of them are just hilarious. Um, for example, one of them was just a JPEG of young Sheldon, which was just great. Didn't even cut the white background out.
Just like
It's
walking
just
around.
yeah, just a flat image of young Sheldon. It was pretty great.
Nice.
It it's the ultimate form of like virtual people watching. Um, and then some of them are like it's also like a big furry subculture
Oh,
thing, I think.
great.
I don't know. I went into one room and it was like a bunch of beds that people were cuddling in, and I'm like, okay, this is this is not
What
working.
does anyone get out of cuddling in VR? Where is the intimacy
I
there?
don't
I
know.
don't
I don't
understand
know.
it.
I don't know.
Jesus Christ.
I don't know. Um, but I did go to the promised land in there where somebody I think I talked about this a while ago that I saw this and I finally made the trek. They have a Kmart fully like mapped out exactly like how a real Kmart was.
Sad, empty, and unstaffed.
Yeah, so you go in there and it's amazing. Like they have the signage, they have everything. Um, just walking around Kmart, like you go to the video game section and it's like GameCube games and PS2 games and like the real covers, and it's like, wow,
It's
this is
missing the
amazing that
smell of
somebody put the
instant
work into
regret,
this.
though. You know?
Yeah.
Well, that's funny. Like, that's going to be
But then I went
historical preservation because the last Kmart in America was it New York State is closing in October now. So,
yeah, that's what I heard too. Yeah. It's officially gone. This will be the last Kmart
so did you go in and
online
like
in VR
act as a
chat.
shopper then in this game and then like bring stuff to the register? Were people still playing it to that extent? Or?
No, I couldn't really suss out that. There is like a layaway system or something in there, and they were doing like a sale on like it was Earth, Wind, and Fire Day because it was the September song or whatever. So they were doing a sale in Kmart for that. But I don't know exactly how it works. The funny thing is, I showed Amanda the next day and everything was different in there. They wiped out a whole section and it was completely empty. And they had a DJ stand up and a set. And then like it was just like blue lights everywhere, like because of the blue light special thing, and
Right.
just rocking out music. All the TVs had like the music video of the song that was playing. It was
Who
they're
was
having a
putting
good
the work
time
into
in
this?
Kmart.
Yeah, I don't get it. Like,
I don't
why?
know. They're having a great. Yep. One of the guy's avatars was the blue light. He's walking around as just the blue light.
How many
It,
people are in this space?
it probably around 10 people on
I mean,
average when I've
that's
been in
way
there,
too many for that.
and most of them are like people I don't want to talk to. I mean, they're like they're the pinball guy in online form, I think
Sure.
I would say, but I'm there too,
Nice.
so I guess I'm one of them too.
So it continues to be the less PC version of Rec Room, is what you're saying. It has held on to that title.
Yes, it is. It's a weird place to be. Tell my kids they're not allowed on that one.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, yes, right. Especially when you can make anything your avatar. Like, they don't need to see a walking penis
Yeah.
at like age 6. So that's funny. Oh
Yeah.
gosh. I'm trying to look at what I have. Well,
It's
I haven't played anything. Oh, Broforce. I played Broforce again, which I think I probably talked about that on the podcast. Um, everyone's played Broforce. It's been out forever, PS4 era. But I bought it for the Switch and started playing that again with my son. He'd never played it. Started playing a new game fresh. And yeah, that game holds up. Like it's
oh
stupid ridiculous. Have you ever played it?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
it's a good game. It's
Yeah.
not as good as Mercenary Kings, but
Right.
we won't bring that up again.
It's uh it's a good time though, just for like arguing at your co-host or co-players and being like, "What'd you do that for? Why'd you shoot the thing? We all died." And then, there's just always something great about that announcer just like screaming like "Brobocop" and like just like it's so dumb. It's the
Yeah.
most dumbass video game thing ever. So yeah, we're like 20% into that game. We're nearing the point that where it becomes almost unplayable with another person because like you need full attention and not like the randomness of other bullets flying around. But I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Still
Huh.
had a good time playing it.
Yeah, and that one was like I feel like now we've crossed the point where that kind of the references to the old 80s stuff has really been a bridge too far.
Yeah.
But that one was like hit the perfect time where like you got the new characters and you're like, yeah, this is great, you know?
Yes. And I still laugh every time that I'm given like Bro Guyver and I realize that I'm fucked because all I can do is throw TNT. You know what I mean? It's like the one character who wouldn't use a gun. So you're
Yeah.
just like, God damn it. Every time you spawn in is him. Yeah. Yeah, you're right though. Like the nostalgia factor in the 10 years the game's been out or 8 or whatever it has been is that well has been dipped into and run dry. But
Yeah. Yep.
it stands as a good disposable action retro game, I think. And killing Satan never gets old.
Yeah.
So
Pro Force.
bro.
Well, oh, you got one more on here.
Oh,
Quiet
you got
Place.
one more too. You got Mud Runner. You been playing that?
Oh yeah. Well, that's just there's a Game Pass game called Expeditions, and it's made by the Mudrunner people.
Yeah.
Those always looked like cool games from afar, and this one is more like Jeeps doing rock climbing shit, which was a little bit
Oh
more
yeah, you did
interesting to
talk
me
about that. Yeah.
than just like digging into mud. But yeah, I think it's all right. It's pretty fun. But it's one of those that it's like it's very purposeful. You got to take things slow. Like it's kind of a simulate, trying to do a simulation of that, and sometimes that's goes awry pretty quickly, and you're just fucked.
Becomes
But
more frustration than fun.
I have a lot of fun with it. It just the when you get the ones where you're like, oh, I rolled my thing. I don't have any tools to fix myself. I went how far? I ran out of gas. It's like kind of wasted an hour doing this type of thing. That part really sucks. But the actual
Right.
gameplay, I like, I guess. But
I'll have to check that out. I've looked at those Mud Runner games a few times too and just never played them. So yeah, my last one was just I watched Quiet Place Day One, which is like the new entry in that series. So for anyone who hasn't seen Quiet Place or Quiet Place Two, it's aliens come down in a meteor and they survive on sound. Like they don't have any vision or anything, so everyone has to be super quiet. So you're basically watching like a silent film, horror film. This one kind of pitched itself as like a prequel, which I always thought was kind of funny because in the first Quiet Place, they show the impact, at least to those people where they're at. They show the meteor coming down. They show kind of the initial aftermath and how it starts to unfold, and then they choose to jump into the future a few months. But this film is like, no, we're going to show you what happened on day one, which they already kind of did. But this is like presumably on Long Island, and I don't know. It kind of like seems like they squandered the premise in the way that like Fear of the Walking Dead kind of blew it. It's like we already kind of know how we got here, so now you're just doing the same thing. Not to say this is a bad movie, I just wouldn't say it adds anything to the lore or dynamic, other than they point out at some point that these things can't swim and like salvation is through getting onto boats, which Okay, that's good to know, but
Aliens who
I've
don't
already
like water.
right, but it's like I've already seen the other two films, so I know that that's not going to work out. So what are we doing here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, well, it might work out for those people, but you know, still everyone else is continually fucked. So I don't know. It was fine. It was more the thing. The only thing that really bothered me was the main character you follow has a pet cat that she just will not like let go for the life of her, even if it puts her life in danger. And this cat goes the entire like hour and 30 minutes of this film without making a sound or meowing once. Which anyone who owns a cat knows that they're complete and utter assholes. And the first thing they would do is meow and be annoying little pieces of shit and get you killed. So shenanigans on this film for a mute cat because that doesn't exist.
Yep.
So screw that.
Cats would all be dead, I think.
You know what I would
Yeah.
do first thing? I was like, I need a distraction because that thing's coming to eat me. I would hawk my cat 40 yards in the other direction. Sacrifice well made. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. It wasn't going to be quiet. There's no such thing.
exactly.
Yeah. Those things. Now that there's been many shows that kind of have like, oh, a big disaster, zombie apocalypse or,
Yes.
something like that. They make a very good first episode of a TV show.
Yes.
And then you go from there. Movies, are it's too much to pack into a movie, I think, to really have that, and then also like any type of story with an arc or resolution to it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. In a movie where I felt at least they very much established the initial impact. Like it didn't seem like this film needed to exist, but again, not going to say it's bad. I just think it's like another version of that. You can watch any of them as far as I'm concerned. Maybe don't watch the second one without having seen the first or the third, but interchangeable. I don't know. It was fine. It scared the crap out of my daughter.
Hmm.
She's like, oh, I'm scared now. I was like, well, I don't think you have to worry about meteors coming down with like blind sound seeking aliens anytime soon. So we're probably fine.
Now, if it looks like pink jelly, then you got a
Oh,
problem.
boy, that is
But
a problem. It's a real problem. Real
join our
problem.
Patreon to find out about that.
Well, should we get on to staff picks?
Yeah.
All right, I'll let you go first.
Surprise, mine's a VR game.
I was trying to decide if this was an actual movie in the Jurassic Park franchise or not, and I was like, I'm not sure.
Who knows anymore, right?
There's so many.
Yeah. No, this is a Jurassic Park Aftermath, which was a VR game where you're stuck at Jurassic World. Your helicopter crashes and you have to navigate
Your butt.
all the different areas of Jurassic Park. It's mostly just like the offices and like labs and stuff like that. So it really doesn't get into like out in the park very much.
First person.
Yeah, first person, kind of doing a lot of the, things that you do in a VR where it's like switches and like levers and stuff
Sure.
like that and that type of manual stuff. But I'll say this has free movement, and it's one of the few games that I didn't get like I could play for a decent amount of time and did not feel like clammy and sick. So I don't know what they're doing. That however they developed this, it's kind of got like a cell shaded cartoony graphics to it. I don't know if that has something to do with it. So maybe things are more flat. I don't know, but it did not make me sick. I played about, I think it's a 7-hour game, something like that.
Oh wow.
So yeah, it's a decent amount. You go to a lot of different areas. I thought it was pretty good for those type of games. However, it does get a little bit repetitive because most of the areas are like, oh, the raptors are here, hide under the desk. The famous scene from, they can open doors, but they can't see you under the desk, So it does turn into a lot of that, but the ones that you do are treated to, the T-Rex level or the ones that spit at you. They're They're
Human dinosaurs, yes.
right. That one's kind of horrifying because you're basically in the dark and you just have a flashlight, so wherever you're pointing, you can see. And they're just all in the vent systems, and if you don't like hear them and like shine the flashlight at them, then they'll spit at you, and then you have to go find water to wash your face off of. So it's a little horrifying. There's a few sections in that game where it's like, okay, this is actually not a campy experience. It's a kind of more of a horror level of threat.
Sounds pretty good. I mean, the length is pretty impressive too. Like for the space, like it seems like you cap out in a narrative game like that in VR within like 2 to 3 hours. So that's pretty cool.
And they got Jeff Goldblum to do some lines.
Nice.
You could tell he was just like reading lines without any context of like what he was talking about.
Sitting at home on like Google Meets, like reading off of a spreadsheet. Yeah.
There's probably like I picture like how he talks, like they just have like music notes where it's just like, this is where you inflect up, and then this is how you talk like this.
Did you ever watch his? Was it like on Max or Prime, whatever his series was? It's like Jeff Goldblum. I forget. Like
Oh yeah, I watched that.
And you just like realize that like he's like a weirdo fucking psychopath like in everyday life, and you're just like, this guy is creepy as fuck. Like I thought he was playing a character, but this is just him. You know what I mean? It's disturbing.
And it's really tough. It was for me tough to like really suss out, like, because it would always be like, interesting, and he would like, but like I couldn't tell if he was actually interested or if it was just like something that he would just say to be like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, is he just able to bullshit talk as if he's interested into things really well just because of the way he speaks? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. He's such a freak of a human. It's interesting. Well, my staff pick, I'm just gonna do a follow up to one I did, I don't know, a year or two ago, but Cliff Diver. They're still an amazing punk rock band. Their new album, Bird Watching, dropped on the 19th. It's it's expanded on everything that their last and initial album, Exorcise Your Demons, had done. It's there's some stuff in there that will remind you of Blink. There's some hardcore stuff. It opens up with a like chorus, like gang vocals, like sing along piece. It's a fantastic record, and there's no reason that these guys are still like in the underground of the punk scene. Not the punk is like on top, although you could argue with Blink-182, maybe they are, or maybe it is, but this feels very much like a band that should be on everyone's radar, and this album might get them there. And if you liked their last one, this is going to make you very happy. So even if you haven't heard the last one, I recommend you go listen to Cliff Diver and listen to whatever they have out there, because it's all good. So
jeez, I didn't know that. I listened to their last one like 100 times. That album is amazing.
It is so good.
Tremendous.
Yeah, the New Vegas Bomb.
Does this one have... Oh yeah, that's a great song. Does it still have like sax, a lot of sax in it?
Yeah, it's still in there. It's not like I mean, it's on par. Like it feels less like, I think this might partially be a ska band, and it's just like also a band that has like some saxophone.
Yeah,
they've kind of branched out in logical ways on this one, and like the production's a lot different. They've really like broken up some of the songs to like very female vocal, like Brie heavy, or I think Joey's the other guy heavy, but then there's still like some of the back and forth, like heavy vocals, and like, I don't know. It's the same kind of stuff of like adulting, but feel like you're failing, like just trying to get through the day, but like in a really upbeat, relatable sort of way that makes them continue to be the very, I think, special band that they are. And I don't know, they deserve more love because they're fucking incredible. Yeah. And I'm still waiting on the vinyl to show up. It hasn't shipped yet. So.
Oh. Yeah, talk about a band that actually gained something by adding a female vocalist.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, for sure. What other band are you referencing? I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah, she adds a lot to the band. Like that dynamic is so good. There's honestly like if these guys existed in like 2002, they'd be all over
Hmm.
everything, you know. But I mean, that scene is gone. But I don't know. There's just something about them where they like are doing just enough to like push the genre, but stay true to what it kind of is. I don't know. Like to me, they are the new wave of pop punk or whatever this is, and it just bums me out that they don't have like 400,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. But I hope they get
Right.
there.
But it's hard to even really describe like exactly what sets them apart either.
Right. It is,
You know?
but once you listen to them, you immediately know.
Yeah.
You're like, this is
Yep.
special. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it makes you feel good. Like, how much music makes you feel good anymore? Like, almost nothing. So,
Yeah. Do the song names still
yes, they're still ridiculous.
not okay?
I think the opening track is like something like 30 flirty and something. I don't know. I forget. But like, yeah, it's still all insane, which I love. Like, I love that a pop punk band like went with like 2006 metalcore like track naming conventions. Like,
Yep.
there's just something great.
Have nothing to do with anything.
Yeah, it's awesome. So, yeah, Cliff Diver is still great. Birdwatching is out. Go on to Spotify, listen to any of their shit, but I
I'm
highly
doing that
recommend
tomorrow.
listening to Birdwatching. So, stupid name for an album, but it's still a great album. Should we get on to the weekend rental? I guess at this point, it's going to be an interesting one. I think.
Yeah.
So, I'll do the spiel. If you're not familiar, the weekend rental, it's a game we play for a given system. Andy and I'll put some time into them, and then we'll decide if we're going to buy, rent, or burn that game. By burn, we mean light it on fire. We're talking about the NES, or more specifically, I guess, in this case, the Famicom and PAL Scandinavian regions for the NES, because it didn't come out anywhere else.
I played a prototype.
You did
Apparently,
play a
that's
prototype.
what I played. But so
Yes, we were talking about Gimmick, or in Scandinavia, Mr. Gimmick. It has been kind of pushed into the limelight more recently because of the limited run deluxe version. It's also just been building buzz over the last decade about what a hidden gem it's been on the NES. And it's a platforming game, Sunsoft, late NES. I think I read somewhere that this was in development for 3 years, dropped in 1992 in Japan. Super Nintendo was in full swing at that point. And what makes it stand apart more so than like the visuals is like an actual physics engine inside of an NES cartridge, which is wild.
yeah, and you feel it. Like it
Yes.
makes it known that we're showing this off.
Yes. Yeah, it you play like a little green guy, not too dissimilar from, I don't know, Bub and Bob from the Bubble Bobble franchise.
Yeah.
But what sets it apart as a platformer is your main weapon, you have to spawn in a star. So you have to hold the button down to spawn it in to do an attack. And then it has like a physics based momentum system to like huck that thing at a bouncing angle across the screen. So you really have to think about how you're going to plan your attacks, the momentum and the spatial awareness you have for them, and the timing around enemies, and then really kind of like get comfortable with that. I think that's my main takeaway with this game is it's so unique that it's hard to get comfortable with that mechanic. Once you do, it gets easier, but it doesn't ever get easy. This game is not easy.
No, and it constantly tries to push you out of that comfortableness. Like as soon as you get used to it, it tries to do something else to get you either to not use it anymore or kind of forget about it, or just have it like be kind of ineffective for what you're trying to do at that moment.
Yes.
Or sometimes, like get to a secret spot and just go nuts trying to do it, and you can't get the right angle or whatever.
Yeah, which is an interesting mechanic. where the weapon is weapon, self defense, but it's also traversal. Like you can hop off of it, you can have it carry you up to ledges, which is part of like getting to the cool hidden areas of these levels. But like, holy shit, is it like pixel precise on what you need to do and understand to get to these places? And in a lot of cases, you don't have time to think about them, and you come to like
Yeah.
forced timing based platforming sections where, dude, it would be like frustrating in a normal game, but it is just like crippling in some senses with what they expected out of the player in this game.
Right. Because it's once you throw that star, it's moving. Like
Mhm.
there's it, it's it's tough to catch. Like to even like it's basically like trying to like do a landing with a spaceship or something. Like trying to match the right angle and speed to land on that thing because it's really tough.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just never got used to that part. Um, and what would you say? It takes about a second to generate that star.
Yeah.
The thing you think the projectile that you throw.
And then
You got
two
to
to
sit
three
there and
seconds once you've thrown it for it to dissipate and allow you to respawn one. So it's
yep.
not like you can spam it. You don't get a second chance right away. It's very
Hmm.
deliberate.
Yeah, you're only allowed one on the screen, and you throw it pretty much straight down. I mean, it kind of has near the same angle as like a Mario Fireball, I would say, but it does not bounce the same way. It kind of goes all over the place.
You know what it reminds me of a lot is Super Mario Land, the bounce angle of the fire projectile, just with gravity added to arc it back down. You know what I mean?
Yep, yep. It is kind of like that way, yeah. And it's tough to account for when you're
Yes.
trying to figure out a pattern of a boss and be in the right spot. And constantly, it's like, well, I thought I did it right this way, and so much vary. A lot of stuff varies in this game, which I think is the real difficulty of this game to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like it's very unique in the library, and it's also very boundary pushing. Like in the visuals are very good. There's a lot happening on screen. There's background animations. It doesn't have scrolling, which I think was probably a technical constraint given everything else
Mm,
they were pushing. Like it's screen to screen, which is never my favorite. Like obviously I know like the Mega Mans and everything out there, but those things are always like not my favorite compared to like a Mario. But yeah, there's something about that mechanic and just like no matter how much you play it, it just feels like you can't quite get your hands around it. And then but it's such a good game in spite of that. Like, I mean, I shouldn't even say in spite of that. Like I'm sure there's people that can like master this. Like when we were kids and you get good at an NES game, you'd probably have it down, but I think the thing that really like holds this game back because it's got the hallmarks of like greatness everywhere else. And this isn't, I guess maybe this isn't a real complaint either, other than it was just a fact of the era, is that this game, which is seemingly otherwise straightforward for the most part, is just dead set on fucking destroying your soul at each and every boss encounter in this game. From level 1 to, well, level 2 is the worst, but all of them are just awful. Awful experiences where you're just
yep.
frustrated beyond all belief.
Yeah, and it the traversal in the main level reminds me somewhat of Mega Man.
Yes.
They also do like the the instant deaths. Like, oh, you should have known that this was going to kill you. What?
Yes.
Yeah,
Every time they have a chance, once a level, they take that opportunity to just dupe you as a player.
you're right. But at least in Mega Man, I always thought once you got to the boss, if you know what you're doing and you know the pattern, you know what you're using, it's a breeze. You got it.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the bag. If you know how to do it, this game is the complete opposite. You get to that boss and it's just the Wild West. Nothing's working the same way that you think it should, or the way it even did on the last attempt. Sometimes
Right.
there's a lot of variables in the boss patterns, I would say, and yeah, it really throws you. I
One,
still don't know what you're supposed to do for the first boss.
well, the first boss and the second boss, especially, like I just didn't
Yeah.
get it. Like when we live streamed it on our Twitch channel, like thank God we were emulating it and you had that rewind button because I don't think we'd have seen anything past the first level of that game. You know what I
No.
mean? I mean those first two levels, that second level boss. I mean, we read how there's a hack around it if you charge him and take shortcuts, but that is the most random ass, unpredictable, hope you get lucky bosses. Which, you know, I know we sound like we're complaining, but like you have to realize like how many hits some of these bosses take. It's like up to 6. And when you are cornered on a single screen, have nowhere to go, and there's not a reliable enemy attack jump or attack pattern, and you've got your only usable weapon for defense takes a second to spawn in, and you have to hope you get that angle right off the bounce. That is madness. Absolute
Yep.
madness.
Yep. And to not like, I don't think you can actually control where he's at. Like, I don't
No.
know if you could reliably like kite him in a certain spot, all the time. I don't. That one was just amazing. Like, if you got trapped in a corner, there was no way. I mean, it was half the screen. If you got on the
Yeah.
wrong, if he crossed into the other half of the screen, you were dead. There was nothing you could do. It was
Yeah.
just wild.
Yeah. Watching you play that, I was just like, no way. Like, I'd have given up like so many attempts ago. But yeah, when and it's sad because like once you push through that, those next bosses were frustrating, but they were much more manageable and had somewhat of a pattern up until the one that we called it quits
Yeah,
on. But
that one was ridiculous too. The thing that sucks though is like we sound like we're shitting on this game pretty hard,
it's great.
and it is. It's very difficult for what it is. But even that boss, like you were saying, if you can rush that level, if you can really speed through that level, that boss is just like sleeping, and you just kick him over the edge, right?
Yep,
Like
it's supposed to be
you
a
don't even have to fight him.
one shot death.
Like, that is the coolest shit I've ever heard in an NES game. And but on the flip side, it's like, well, you didn't do that, so fuck you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's just so frustrating because it's like how many people never got to see anything beyond that first level or second level for
Yep.
an otherwise like really inventive. And don't get me wrong, there is complete and utter bullshit in segments of the later levels, but nothing compared to that. I still like we've talked about in the stream. I don't know how without rewind and the base set of lives you would progress. Like you'd have to
Mhm.
be so willing to just memorize this thing.
Yeah.
It
I
I
mean,
guess
I
like the PAL version got a difficulty setting selector. In
well,
Scandinavia, the
50 hertz is already easier, so
yeah,
that
that's
helps a
true.
little bit.
Yeah, but the Japan one was just like, no, this is the flavor you get. So
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, it's pretty brutal, and at the same time, it's a technical masterpiece kind of, because I mean, even just the stuff that they throw you, there's a section early on in the first level where they give you a nice little tube down in the
yes,
ocean. You see all these fish. It's just amazing that you're just walking through this. The only point of this is to show off how cool this is in this setting that they made. And then the very next thing is like a little platform on a crane that, if once it goes past the halfway point, it just drops the crane,
and you
and
die.
you were supposed to know that it was going to do that. So it's one of those games where it's like one screen you're like, wow, this is amazing. The next screen, shit.
Yeah, it it's pretty wild. It's wild in the ways that it like amazes you if you're familiar with like the limitations of the NES, and it's like also wild and shocking in the way that it just completely and utterly punishes anyone trying to breeze through it. It's it's
Yeah.
it's an interesting game. It's really sad that it didn't come out here. I get why it didn't timing wise, and apparently like I was reading an article from the original developer like the Sunsoft rep at America was like all about it. Like it was supposed to come out. They'd prototyped it like we played. He left before the game even released in Japan, so he has no idea as to why it never came out. I think you can make some
Hmm.
guesses, difficulty, lack of interest at that point because the Super Nintendo was there. But this this could be the little Samson, right? Like this would have been the game that maybe came out after that. Would have been, you know, what is it, $1,500 to $1,700 right now too. So
Yeah.
I'd put Little Samson this on like the same pedestal of like truly amazing, less played games. I don't think either one is probably worth like paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars for,
No.
but it's cool to see this one get a repackaging and make it more accessible for people who wouldn't have gotten it otherwise.
Yeah. I this is a game that you should play for the experience of it, just to see how, I mean, to feel that how you go down an incline or a hill in this game feels really weird. I
Yes.
mean, it does feel like a later 16-bit maybe ice level kind of a little bit in some regards.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
on an NES game, it does feel very weird
Yeah.
to
There's a
have
there's a
that where you're
weightiness
flying
to it
around.
that like
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense just talking about it. Like you have to experience it. Like it's interesting.
Yeah. You're gonna swear the first time you feel it because you're gonna go flying into
Everything.
some area that you didn't think you should be flying into
Yes.
based on that. But yeah.
Well, I mean, what do you think you give it then on the Byron and Burn scale?
Boy. I toward the end of that stream, I was starting to turn around on it a little bit because we were blowing through things a little bit faster, seeing some cooler stuff.
Yeah.
And then we hit the last one, and well, that just was seemed like it was like the end game over where you can't rent this game, you have to own it type thing, one of those things.
Right.
Um and I there were parts where I would say I could say this is a buy, but there was too much stuff dragging you down that I think that unlike Little Samson, where I would play for fun over and over, I think this one is a try it a couple times, you see some of the cool stuff and you get it. So I think I gotta go rent. Even though it's wild because there's some really good stuff I'd say buy, and there's some really stuff that's burn. This is
Yeah.
not just a middling game. It's a very wide spectrum, I think.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, like I think, if this were the type of game that you did manage to beat once, I don't think you would come back to it easily. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I'm with you. Like this thing, if you're familiar with the NES and its limitations and its library, this thing is an absolute showpiece. I think everyone should experience it, but it's not going to be for everyone. I'm an NES guy, and even I don't know that I love everything it throws at me, but I'm just wowed by the highlights. I don't think there's enough
The
there though for
music.
me to. Yeah, the
We
music,
forgot about the music too. That's great
right?
music in this game
And
too. But
it's kind of notorious in the Japanese version of like the added chips to make the sound really
mhm.
great, which didn't the Scandinavian release did not have that. So
Oh, okay. Hmm.
yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I am with you though. I think like it has to be a rent just for overall package. I think technical showpiece and design doesn't always equal like must have, and I think that's kind of where I
Mhm.
land. I think everyone should play it though, where rental just makes sense.
Yep. It's got high highs and low lows, I think.
Exactly. Exactly. And with that, I guess that's another Byron Burn in the books and another
It
episode in the
is.
books.
It is. They are making a sequel to this game.
And it's already
So
out.
is it out?
It's
Okay.
out. Came out this month.
Okay. You would think that we were timing this because of the clickbait, but we had no idea. I had no idea. So
No, I didn't realize it. I knew it was getting a sequel. I guess I kind of forgot about it, and I just happened to grab it on a clearance sale. So the
yeah.
first one. I haven't played the second one yet. I hear great things. Chris from Stone Age Gamer says Gimmick 2 is very good. It's been developed out of a Scandinavian game dev with no ties or affiliation to the original team or anything. So I'm not
They should have
sure.
went with like Dr. Gimmick or something to one up the Mister part, but
He's moved up the social ladder now. Huh?
Professor Gimmick. uh yeah, we stream these games sometimes like Gimmick. I don't know if I would recommend watching our replay of this. There's a lot of rewind, and I honestly I'm not sure how this video encoded. It's probably pretty rough. We'll see what it looks like on YouTube, but
Yeah.
it's probably not. You can kind of get the gist of it the first time we went at it straight, but once we started doing the rewinding, it kind of becomes a little messy.
Yeah, that second level death loop was hard for me to watch at the time we were doing it, so I can't
Yeah.
imagine revisiting it as a spectator.
Yeah. But that's over at twitch.tv/weekend rental. We're at weekendrentalpodcast@gmail.com. We're on the Twitter. So send us a message if you want to. Ask us, what the safe streets are in Fargo. We know about that. Maybe what parts of Fargo not to visit.
All of it but downtown. How about that?
Yep.
And don't cross over to Moorhead because, as we've learned, it's a third world country, according to Mr. Wonderful. So.
Yep. Stay on the one side of the river. Yep. But yeah, that'll do it this week. So until next time, be kind, rewind.
Bananas.